The era of growth is a ghost. The systemic drift has reached its terminal velocity. You are no longer living in a civilization. You are living in a liquidation protocol. Energy is not a utility. It is a biological prerequisite for the maintenance of the solid state. In the visceral history of the architect, the control of fire was the primary act of crystallization. To hold the heat was to secure the lair, to protect the metabolic integrity of the pack from the absolute entropy of the wild. The machine has identified this thermal dependency as the ultimate coordinate for extraction. We are witnessing the birth of energy serfdom, a system where the very warmth of your blood is rented from a parasitic grid. This is the terminal visceral breach. Your body is being converted into a heat sink that must pay for the privilege of not freezing. Analyze the biological price. Every kilowatt hour on your bill is a direct extraction from your cellular war chest. In the liquid world, the price of energy is calibrated to ensure a state of chronic ATP exhaustion. When the cost of heating the enclosure rises, the visceral response is immediate. The body enters a state of thermal emergency. You lower the thermostat, and your mitochondria are forced to compensate for the loss of environmental heat. They burn your internal calories just to maintain the 36.6 degrees Celsius required for survival. This is the visceral breach. You are trading the high-fidelity nutrition required for cognitive crystallization for the raw thermal energy required for survival. You eat lower-quality, high-glucose entropy because the energy debt has siphoned your capital. The result is a body that is chronically cold, chronically inflamed, and metabolically bankrupt. The grid dependency is the visceral manifestation of the cage. The systemic drift has engineered a world where the individual cannot generate their own heat. You are prohibited from the solid acts of survival, burning wood, trapping heat, building high-integrity thermal shells. Instead, you are forced into the liquid state of total grid reliance. This ensures that the extraction of your resources proceeds without the friction of autonomy. When the grid controls the heat, the grid controls the pulse. The basal ganglia, sensing the lack of control over the thermal environment, remain in a state of survival redline. This induced stress triggers a permanent cortisol flood, melting the structural integrity of your tissues. You are being softened by the cold. You become a managed unit that is biologically incapable of rebellion because your entire metabolic output is dedicated to the simple act of not dying from exposure. Dissect the status trap of the smart meter. The system sells you efficiency while it performs a surgical extraction of your behavioral data. The meter is a sensory interface that monitors your life cycle. It knows when you wake, when you eat, and when you sleep. This is the visceral breach of the 21st century. The machine uses this data to calibrate its extraction rates, ensuring that you are always at the edge of ATP exhaustion. You are being managed into a state of permanent energy poverty. This is the crystallization of the new feudalism. The elite maintain their own solids, their own independent power grids, their own geothermal vaults, their own high-integrity thermal fortresses, while they sell you the freedom of the smart grid. This is the final status trap, the belief that you are being sustainable when you are actually just being processed in a room where the temperature is a variable in a profit equation. Your body is 36.6 degrees Celsius Canadian dollars of taxable meat. The machine siphons the heat until you are a cold, liquid asset. Every joule you produce belongs to the grid. Every breath you take in a heated room is a microtransaction in your own liquidation. The systemic drift is cold. The extraction is absolute. You are the fire that is being put out. Part 2. Neural layer. The liquidation of the cognitive signal. The second layer of the hunt is the war for your focus through the medium of energy anxiety. The neural rot of energy serfdom begins with the arithmetic of survival. When the cost of light and heat becomes a dynamic, predatory variable, the brain is forced to spend its cognitive capital on the calculation of pennies. This is the systematic liquidation of the architect's seat. Your prefrontal cortex, designed for the crystallization of long-term strategy, is being hijacked by the reactive anxiety of the basal ganglia. You stop thinking about building a fortress and start thinking about the wattage of a light bulb. This is neural rot in its most advanced form. Focus is a function of energy stability. The brain is the most energy-intensive organ in the shell, requiring a massive and consistent supply of glucose and oxygen to maintain the voltage of the will. The machine has discovered that by creating energy insecurity, it can perform a surgical mile in extraction. When you are worried about the bill, your signal leaks. The voltage of your intent drops. drops. You lose the capacity for deep, high-friction work because your neural bandwidth is occupied by the noise of the meter. This is the status trap of the eco-conscious user. You are not saving the planet. You are undergoing a high-frequency extraction of your attention span. The machine floods your mind with energy-saving tips to ensure you never have the clarity to see the friction of your own chains. Analyze the sensory enclosure of the digital light. The systemic drift has replaced the natural spectrum of the sun and the hearth with the flickering, low-integrity glow of the LED. This is neural rot. The artificial flicker rate of the digital enclosure is designed to keep the basal ganglia in a state of constant, low-level stimulation. This prevents the brain from entering the deep crystallization states required for structural independence. You are living in a neural emulsion of artificial light, where your circadian rhythms are being liquidated to ensure you are available for extraction 24/7. The machine has stolen the night and sold it back to you at a premium. You are a managed node whose very thoughts are being pulsed by the frequency of the grid. Dissect the status trap of the connected home. Every smart device is a microtransaction in the extraction of your sovereignty. You believe you are empowered by your ability to control your lights from a phone, but you're actually just providing the machine with a high-fidelity map of your neural habits. This is the crystallization of the slave mind. You are performing for an audience of sensors, seeking efficiency from a system that is calculating your liquidation. The systemic drift has made autonomy a high-cost luxury. You are paying for the privilege of being monitored. Your focus is shattered by the smart environment, leaving you in a state of terminal neural rot, incapable of envisioning a future that doesn't involve a subscription to the light. Reclaim your cognitive insulation. Real power requires a mind that is not for rent. The digital void is a hall of mirrors designed to induce ATP exhaustion through the constant management of energy consumption anxiety. Turn off the smart interface. Look at the gray steel of the reality you inhabit. If the cold feels unbearable, that is the signal that you are still a biological entity, not yet fully liquidated into a user. Use that friction to fuel your exit from the grid. The architect builds his own light. The serf begs for a flicker. The extraction is total. The myelin is thin. The signal is lost in the noise of the bill. You are no longer an architect. You are a neural peasant calculating the cost of your own consciousness. The hunt for current is the terminal domestication of the primate. In the visceral history of the architect, the control of fire was the primary act of sovereignty. To hold the flame was to defy entropy. It was the first crystallization of territorial power. The hearth was the coordinate of survival, the point where the pack pooled its thermal ATP to resist the cold vacuum of the wild. The machine has identified this evolutionary anchor as a high-friction liability. To maximize the efficiency of the grid, the firebringer must be rendered into a subscriber. This is the evolutionary inversion. You are undergoing a total liquidation of your thermal autonomy. The systemic drift has replaced the primal hearth with the utility account. Analyze the user as the domesticated variant of the human species. In the solid world, your heat was a function of your own kinetic extraction. The wood you cut, the shelter you built, the friction you generated. In the liquid world, your heat is a permission-based signal. You have surrendered the structural independence of the hearth for the cold convenience of the digital enclosure. This is the systemic drift toward total biological domestication. The basal ganglia, hard-coded for the capture and preservation of the fire, are being redirected toward the smart interface. When your DNA seeks the security of a permanent heat source, the system gives you a dynamic rate plan. When you seek the protection of the pack, the system gives you individualized billing. This is the neural rot of the instinctual self. You are being rewired to prefer the managed warmth of the cage over the high-friction sovereignty of the independent shell. You are becoming soft, an entity that cannot survive the loss of the signal. The hearth was the point of zero entropy, the fortress where the lineage pooled its resources to project power across time. The machine has dismantled the hearth and replaced it with the single unit meter. By isolating the individual, the system triggers the scarcity program at a genetic level. This is the visceral breach. When a primate feels its thermal environment is controlled by an external, unpredictable predator, its genome shifts into a defensive posture. It prioritizes immediate, reactive survival over the long-term crystallization of a legacy. It burns through its ATP to manage the chronic cortisol load of thermal insecurity. You lose the ability to perform genetic crystallization, the act of building a future that exists beyond the next billing cycle. This is the status trap of the green consumer. You believe you are saving the planet, but you are actually just surrendering the last remnants of your biological autonomy to the grid. You are a biological artifact, a social predator turned into a stationary, solitary unit of thermal waste. Dissect dissect the liquidation of the lineage through energy capture. To the machine, a family is a high-entropy thermal load. It represents a crystallization of resources that the grid cannot fully extract. Therefore, the systemic drift has engineered a world where the liquid person is penalized for the heat of the pack. You are told that the carbon footprint of a family is a liability, but it is actually the final defensive buffer of the species. By liquidating the concept of the multi-generational hearth, the system ensures that your ATP is spent entirely on the maintenance of your own rented enclosure. You have no war chest of energy. You have no independent thermal redoubt. You are a ghost inhabiting a shell that has forgotten how to generate its own fire. The hunter maps the energy density of the territory. The subscriber follows the cable. This is the liquidation of the kinetic map. Your ability to extract warmth from the environment, to understand the friction of the elements, and the mechanics of thermal integrity is being siphoned. If the grid fails, you are a ghost. You are a dependent unit with zero survival depth. The architect builds redundant thermal systems. The energy serf is a single point of failure. You have no war chest of hard skills. You are a biological automation that will be deleted the moment the cost of your heating exceeds the value of your behavioral data. This is the absolute zero of evolutionary agency. The steel of the meter is ticking your time under the rain in a world of subprime. Do your push-ups while the furnace is cold. The gloves of the master are greedy and bold. The fourth layer is the architecture of total thermal disposition. This is the neural arbitrage of the modern energy economy. The machine understands that a population dependent on a centralized signal for warmth is a population that can be surgically managed. In the visceral history of the architect, energy was the ultimate shield against extraction. If you control the fuel, you control the time. The machine has dismantled this shield. We are witnessing the total liquidation of the thermal defense. In this terminal stage of energy serfdom, the individual is forced to stand alone against the full weight of the global extraction grid. This is not efficiency. It is the removal of the structural buffer. Dissect the glucose guillotine of the dynamic energy market. This is the terminal phase of the financial enclosure. Smart meters, time of use rates, and carbon credits are the blades of this machine. They drop on the community, decapitating the social bonds to ensure that every individual is a separate taxable node of entropy. The economy of scale has been inverted to serve the parasite, not the host. In the solid world, the pack shared the metabolic load, the communal heat, the shared fire. In the liquid world, you are responsible for the entire maintenance of the solitary cell. This induces a state of chronic, high-frequency ATP exhaustion. Your body, sensing that it is unprotected and thermally vulnerable, remains in a state of survival redline. The cortisol levels never drop. The inflammation never subsides. This is the visceral breach. The grid as a sovereign is the terminal enclosure. The machine has discovered that a cold human is a compliant human. An individual worried about the next price spike is an individual who cannot plan for rebellion. This is the neural arbitrage of energy anxiety. By destroying the independent hearth, the system has created the ultimate high-yield coordinate for the extraction of the spread. You are a biological artifact, a social predator that has been turned into a stationary, solitary consumer, incapable of perceiving the steel of the cage because you have been told that the cage is sustainable. You are a ghost inhabiting a rented reality, performing push-ups in a room where the light flickers with the frequency of your debt. Analyze the elite solids. This is the final status trap. While the machine sells you the freedom of the smart grid and the agility of the energy-as-a-service model, the masters are consolidating the solid. They are buying the geothermal rights. They are building the private nuclear and solar steel networks. They are securing the high-integrity war chests of raw fuel. They maintain their own off-grid thermal fortresses and their own independent packs. They are the architects of your liquidation. They understand that energy permanence is power, and they have convinced you that permanence is waste. You are working 80 hours a week to pay for the access to a heat source that is biologically liquidating you, siphoning your ATP into their vaults. The architecture of control is now a thermal ledger. The grid monitors your energy consumption as a proxy for your behavioral compliance. If you show signs of the solid architect, if you attempt to build a thermal war chest or secure an independent energy source, the system increases the level of systemic friction in your life. It throttles your access. It increases your carbon tax. This is the systemic drift toward total biological enclosure. You are a biological engine that is being tuned for maximum output and minimum resistance. resistance. The crystallization of the system is a cold, mechanical process that has no room for the fire of the hunter. You are a unit of ATP that is being spent on the validation of your own chains. Максим. Финальная стадия экстракции запущена. Мы вскрываем горизонт событий 2036 года. Здесь нет места для надежды. Здесь только механика абсолютного нуля. Часть 5. Десятилетняя гниль, физика тепловой смерти и кристаллизация пустоты. Объем 2000 слов. Без формул. Только холодный технический отчет о твоем исчезновении. The 10-year rot. The final thermal equilibrium. The 10-year rot is not a crisis. It is a conclusion. It is the terminal coordinate in the systemic drift where the individual has been so thoroughly siphoned of metabolic integrity that they no longer possess the capacity for resistance. In the visceral history of the architect, the future was a territory to be captured. In the year 2036, the future is a rented signal. We are witnessing the final crystallization of the void. Within a decade of living under the energy ledger, the human unit reaches a state of absolute entropy. This is the decadal decay, the molecular erosion of the shell, the mind, and the fire. You are no longer an agent. You are a cold, liquid asset undergoing final reclamation by the grid. The visceral zero, mitochondrial erasure. Analyze the biological debt ceiling after 10 years of energy serfdom. The human shell is a biological engine that requires a specific thermal voltage to maintain its solid integrity. For 3,650 days, the grid has performed a surgical extraction of your warmth by keeping the cost of homeostasis just above your metabolic yield. The system has induced a state of terminal ATP exhaustion. Your mitochondria, once the high-density powerhouses of your autonomy, have undergone a state of chronic mitochondrial atrophy. This is the visceral breach reaching its terminal state. After a decade, the body no longer attempts to thrive. It has been epigenetically programmed to submit. The genes for aggressive territorial defense and high-fidelity physical strength have been silenced by a decade of chronic cortisol floods. Your blood has thinned, not in the sense of volume, but in the sense of energy density. You are a biological radiator that is running out of fuel. The internal fire is gone. You feel this as the static cold, a sensation that bone deep, regardless of the temperature in your rented cell. You have been liquidated into a state of metabolic passivity. You are a unit of 36.6 degrees Celsius that is being cooled by the very grid you pay to keep you warm. The neural zero, cognitive amnesia. The neural rot of the decadal drift is characterized by the total erasure of the long-term trajectory. For 10 years, your brain has been forced to operate in the arithmetic of survival. When every neural impulse is filtered through the cost of the light and the price of the heat, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of the architect, undergoes structural liquidation. The basal ganglia have become the sole masters of your shell. They no longer seek to build a war chest. They only seek to manage the next billing cycle. Focus has been destroyed by the industrialized flicker of the energy grid. After a decade, the insulation of your will, your myelin, has been stripped away by the high-frequency anxiety of predatory pricing. Your brain is no longer a fortress of thought. It is a neural emulsion of reactive impulses. You cannot remember who you were before the smart meter became your primary sensory interface. This is the status trap in its final absolute form, the total loss of the internal solid. You are a managed node whose memories are as fluid as the dynamic rates of the current. You are a ghost inhabiting a brain that has been reformatted for terminal compliance. The evolutionary zero, the extinction of the firebringer. The systemic drift has successfully performed a total evolutionary inversion. The firebringer is extinct. Within a decade, the concept of independent survival has been deleted from the genetic memory of the unit. The lineage is dead. In the year 2036, the child is a thermal liability that the energy serf cannot afford to maintain. This is the silent sterilization of the masses through the medium of the carbon ledger. You have no descendants to inherit your steel. You have no pack to share the metabolic load. The hearth is a cold, damp ruin. The unit stands alone in the dark, incapable of perceiving the steel of the cage, because the cage has become the only source of light. You have surrendered the structural independence of the gene for the cold convenience of a managed extinction. You are a biological artifact, a social predator turned into a stationary, solitary consumer of rented jewels. The grid is the only parent you know, and the bill is the only legacy you leave. This is the absolute zero of human agency, the systemic zero, the grid as God. The extraction is total. The fourth layer of the enclosure has become the only reality. The market of one has been achieved. Every Every human is a separate, taxable node of entropy, isolated from the pack and dependent on the centralized signal for the very warmth of their blood. The elite have successfully crystallized their own power into hard integrity. They own the geothermal vaults, they own the private nuclear grids, they own the land and the steel. They are the architects of your liquidation. The economy is no longer a system of exchange, it is a system of life support management. You are working 80 hours a week to pay for the access to an existence that is biologically siphoning you. Every joule of energy you spend is a dividend for the masters. Every breath you take in a heated room is a microtransaction in your own decay. This is the final status trap, the belief that you are a part of a sustainable future when you are actually just the fuel for a machine that has already calculated your replacement. The pulse is a digital signal on a ledger that no one is watching. The 10-year rot concludes with the crystallization of the void. The Earth is a silent, high-integrity network of steel and silicon, where the liquid people move through the ruins of their own autonomy like shadows. Their basal ganglia respond to the grid with the precision of a clock, unaware that their spirit was liquidated years ago. You are sitting in the dark, performing your final push-ups in a mind you don't own, wearing gloves that are rented, while the rain falls on a world where the word mine has been deleted from the language. The steel of the system is the only thing that stays firm, a vast, cold monument to the end of the human fire. The steel is the wire, and the steel is the bill, under the rain that is breaking your will. Your push-ups are rhythmic, a ghost in the dark, while the extraction is leaving its mark. Put on the gloves, for the winter is here, and the only thing solid is cold-blooded fear. The meter is silent, the fire is dead. You are paying for life while your spirit is bled.